So hello and welcome to this video from the Worcestershire Careers Hub team for National Careers Week 2021. My name is Joe French and I am the Project Support Intern here at the Worcestershire Careers Hub. Throughout the next video, we're going to be discussing the top 10 careers tips that have been sent in by business experts from across the county. We also have a panel of business experts and professionals who are going to talk us through these tips and give us their own insights. So, we're first going to introduce the panel. So Ben, can you introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what you do?
Hi, my name is Ben Mannion. I'm a director of Hewitt Recruitment. We supply temporary and permanent individuals into work across the Worcestershire and West Midland regions. And I also chair the Future Skills Board for the Worcestershire Local Enterprise Partnership, which oversees the kind of delivery of all the careers and enterprise company contracts such as the Careers Hub, Enterprise Advisor Network and Worcestershire Apprenticeships.
Perfect. Emma, if you want to do the same, please.
Sure. So I'm Emma Jeffries. I am HR manager for Southco Manufacturing. We are an engineering company based in Worcester, and I look after all of the people side of the business. So that's recruiting, looking after all the well-being, and just generally looking after all our people once they're employed in the business. I'm also an enterprise advisor for Worcester Sixth Form College, so I am the link between the education and employer, and also I work with Ben on the Future Skills Board, and I'm a member of that team as well.
So thank you, Joe. So my name's Alex Price. So I work for the Worcestershire Local Enterprise Partnership. So I'm the PR communications and marketing coordinator. So I help kind of raise a bit of awareness and profile of a lot of the work that the LEP does.
And Karina, it's the same question to you.
Sure, thank you, Joe. My name's Karina. I work for Betadene, Worcestershire's Commercial Technology Accelerator. I'm the Communications and Communities Manager, so I look after all of things internal and external communications, marketing and PR-wise.
Keep a log of all the brilliant things you do. This can be extracurricular activity, work experience, helping in the family business, voluntary work or clubs. Having all this information to hand will be so useful when completing job applications. So on that tip again, Emma, do you mind starting that one off for us and give us a bit of an insight on to what you think about that tip?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just, as you started talking about that question, I just thought about some of the interviews that I've done recently with students in local schools, and it amazed me actually some of the extracurricular things that some of these guys are doing, but they just don't mention it. And they don't mention it because I think it's become part of their everyday, it's become part of their normal. So to them, it doesn't feel like it's an exciting thing to say. I mean, I remember I had one student who was part of a local football club and was teaching the young children, and she had it as a tiny little one sentence at the bottom of the CV, and I was like, make that a big deal in showing you all the extra things you can do. And we've got a lot of people, I'm sure, are carers at home. We've got a lot of people who go and do things in the community, but it just becomes normal and they don't think it's something they should mention, but it really is. So those are the things I'd say, just keep a list of those things, and when you're doing your CV, make that important, make that part of it, because it really makes you stand out, makes you shine above any other candidates, really.
Yeah, I think it is important to add those things to the CV. A lot of people often don't realise the things that they actually are doing. So again, Ben, pass that again to you. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, Emma's spot on in what she's just said. I mean, I think having worked in recruitment for a long time now and seen a lot of CVs, that the whole kind of not really selling yourself is a particularly kind of almost British disease that we have. We don't really like to shout about what we do and what we're good at. What I would say is kind of going one step further, actually, is that if you've got a nice log of all these different things that you've done, then when you're applying to a specific role, you can look then to pick out the specific bits that are relevant to that opportunity as well. Or indeed, if you're writing a cover letter for a position, your CV might detail, as Emma's already talked about, the kind of nuts and bolts of your skills and experience and qualifications. but a cover letter is where you can kind of really bring it to life and talk about you as more of a rounded individual, and all those other kind of soft skills maybe that you've got from all this other experience that you've got outside maybe the world of work and perhaps education. So, sell yourself. And the way to do that is to start actually understanding all these different things that you've done. So, something simple, keep a list. And then you've always got that to refer to when you're looking to put a job application in.
So another tip that's come in is understand the pressure that are affecting other people in your organisation. So Karina, if you want to start that one off, how important is it to sort of understand that people in your organisation may be sort of under pressure themselves as well?
Really, really important, and dependent on the organisation you work for, and how close you are to the pressures maybe higher up in an organisation, and understanding that they're not a direct pressure on yourself, but for your either line manager, CEO, or mid-management, is incredibly important. You might not always understand the pressures that happen within an organisation, but I do think it is imperative to be mindful that people react to different pressures in ways that you might not, and to keep that mindfulness when constructing yourself sort of in the office, factory, workplace, wherever you are. We all operate in different ways, and whereas you might not be able to be understanding of every situation, you can definitely be mindful.
Yeah, it is really important to understand what other pressure people are facing. And Alex, is there anything else you'd like to add to that as well?
Yeah, so I'd again, I'd completely echo what Karina said there. I think often when you're kind of coming into work or you're kind of new into a role, you're often focused on what your objectives and what your aims are, which often mean that kind of what your pressures and deadlines are. So when when you've often got to go to third parties or kind of members who aren't directly in your team, sometimes it pays to just be aware of the fact that they might be under their own pressures. So sometimes perhaps when you overchase for something, perhaps it can end up reflecting quite badly, because sometimes you just have to take a step back and think people are doing the best they can, or they're trying to, and they will get back to me as soon as they can. So it's just important to remember that obviously everyone handles things in their own way, and they will do their best to help you as soon as they can.
Okay, so the next tip is search for the value in feedback or criticism. Try not to take this personally and use it to motivate yourself to be better. So Alex, if you want to start off with that one then, and what sort of advice would you give around that?
Yeah, so this is one that's quite close to heart for me, because I think as a person, I think I take criticism, especially on some of the work I've done. As much as I try not to, I do take it to heart, because obviously it's something you put your pride and joy into your work, and often sometimes when there's criticisms you go, oh god, it kind of, there's something that I've done wrong and all that kind of process. And I think this is a really important tip, because it's a really crucial skill if you can master it, and you can take criticism on face value and just say, look, it's nothing personal on me. They're criticizing something which at the end of the day is hopefully going to make my work better, so that it can have kind of a wider impact. And the approach I try and look at as much as I can is the feedback I get is often to benefit the work we're doing as a LEP. So it might be to help us reach wider audiences or engage with more people. And at the end of the day, that's always what we want to do. So yeah, it's a bit more of a difficult one, because often when you do get bad advice, or bad feedback, you kind of go, but yeah, it's just one of those ones to try not to take it to heart. Yeah, so I'd agree with that.
So Karina, is there anything you'd like to add to that as well?
Sure. I mean, echoing from what Alex just said, I agree wholeheartedly with sort of what he's put forward there. But another piece of advice I think I would offer is ask yourself, is the critique fair, first and foremost? Is it work related? Is it personality related? You're never, ever going to get on with absolutely everybody within a team, within an organization. So potentially you might run into critique from time to time that isn't fair, or isn't necessarily to do with your work ethic or methods. It could be a personal critique. You can learn from both. But I think you have to look first and foremost, is it fair? And also remember, 9 times out of 10, it is an opinion and not a fact. So whereas you can always grow and learn from critique and feedback that you receive, sometimes it might not always be as bad as you think it is.
So the next tip is do things and get experience that improve and increase your confidence. So Ben, what's your thoughts on that tip?
Yeah, when employers look to interview people, they're not just looking necessarily at their skills and experience, they're also looking at them as a more kind of rounded individual. It's often referred to as kind of being ready for work or employability skills. And so going out there and maybe taking yourself outside of your comfort zone, doing different things, working maybe with volunteer groups, or even actually taking part in things like sports or other kind of hobbies and activities can help boost your confidence, help boost your people and communication skills, and just, I suppose, give you a slightly more rounded approach away from maybe just the core skills that people are looking for when they recruit for somebody.
Perfect. And have you got anything to add to that, Emma?
Yeah, I would just say that I would agree with Ben. You know, when I'm looking at candidates, you know, you've got skills will get you through the door if your CV tells us that you've got a certain number of qualifications, you've got a certain number of skills, you know, but just as important for us as a business is the people fit. Will you fit into our culture? And, you know, I want someone, you know, that comes in with examples of, you know, what they've gone above and beyond what is normal. And so, you know, we're looking for somebody who has done, you know, things like Ben discussed there with volunteer work, and how have you gone out into the community, or have you got an extra job, and all things like that. You know, if I think back to when I was looking for an apprenticeship, I had, as well as looking for an apprenticeship, I already had a Saturday job. I was already volunteering in a local play scheme, looking after the children in the summer holidays. And they were things I think that added to my, you know, when I went for my interviews, they added to making me stand out, really.
So the next tip that has come in is always have at least one question to ask in your interview. This could be about the company in general, but also think outside the box. If the question isn't about the company, then maybe think about asking about what progression opportunities there may be. So again, Ben, can you just sort of fill us in on that tip for us?
The idea of asking questions at interview when you're a candidate is one that always comes up, actually, and I have quite a personal view on this as somebody who interviews a lot of people. First of all, yes, obviously having a question to ask is actually important. It shows that you are interested. It shows that you're maybe, you know, you're thinking past maybe what's just on a job spec in front of you. It shows that you really want to find out more about the opportunity and about the role. And certainly, you know, ones that often come up are things like, you know, what are the job prospects, you know, in the long term with the role, what are the training and development opportunities, even actually asking basic things about, you know, working hours, all those kind of things. It just shows that you're really interested in what this opportunity has to offer. I do, though, have a little bit of a caveat with the whole kind of always have one to ask, which is don't just ask one for the sake of it. So if you are going to ask one, make sure it's actually something that's relevant and that is going to bring something new to the conversation, because what I have experienced in the past is somebody who's asking a question that's actually already been covered in the interview. And actually what that shows, it kind of makes you think that person's not been listening to you. So do make sure that if you're going to ask a question, it's got relevance and it is actually going to add something either to your experience or indeed to the person on the other side of the table. But yeah, asking questions is important. Nowadays, you know, an interview is a two-way thing. I expect Emma will nod a little bit with this as well, in the sense that in the past it was often seen as, you know, the employer would be sat there saying, right, impress me, I'm going to ask all these questions and you've got to answer them. But it's changed, the dynamics change now, and employers want to know what a potential employee has got to say and what they're thinking. So that idea of kind of having a two-way conversation and asking questions really is important, and something that I would very much advise you to do. And it ties in with the research as well. If you've done your research properly, you should have questions, actually, because that should throw up all sorts of different things for you to be thinking about, relevant to either the role or the company or both.
So if I pass that over to Emma as well, and Emma, I suppose if you can just touch on as well how a young person could sort of gain those questions, and how they'd go about sort of finding those questions and asking the right question.
Yeah, sure. So you know, absolutely agree with Ben. It's great that someone has some questions, even if it's just one. That is absolutely fine. And also, if you don't have any, that's also absolutely fine, because I get some of the randomest questions, like Ben just said, oh, what are the working hours? And I'm thinking, well, that's on the job advert. You kind of know what the working hours are. That's a bit of a random question to ask me at the end, but it's because they haven't really thought about it and they're just thinking of something to say. And that's also not the right thing to do. So to me, it's about, doing back to research. We keep talking about research, but there's so much out there now on the internet. So what I love is if they've looked at, for example, they've looked at our Facebook page, and we've got a lot of posts on our Facebook page, and they might have looked at one of our family day events that we have, and then they say, oh, could you tell me a bit more about this? They look some great pictures. What was that all about? What was the reason that you did that as a business? Those are the kind of things you can do, and that really helps us to see that they've got a bit of enthusiasm for the company. They've made an effort to look into it. And, that's what we look for. And as Ben said, an interview now is a two-way thing. We find it's more of a chat and a conversation now. It's not kind of, we sit around a table. It's not a panel of people on the other side. I hate that. When I get my candidates in now, well, pre-COVID anyway, when we get our candidates in, we get them in a round table if I can. And it's kind of like we sit around the table and have a conversation. It's not this old-fashioned panel. And, some of the questions I love, just to give some good ones, is what I love is, I've been at Southco a long time. And what I love is people who actually gets asked the question, why do I enjoy working here? It's a great question. Why have I stayed working at Southco so long? Because it shows that they're trying to find out what it's like to work here. Because at the end of the day, the interview is for the employer, but it's also for the candidate to work out whether we're the right company for them. So yeah, genuinely ask those kind of questions to find out if we're both a fit, because this is a career for somebody and they want to make sure they make those right decisions.
So the next tip we've got here is don't be afraid to ask questions if you are unsure about something. So Karina, if you want to start us off with that one, and how the importance of asking questions if you are unsure on a topic or a situation.
Sure. So this is one I probably feel the strongest about personally. Anyone who has worked with me, past or present, I've probably irritated to the 9th degree of how many questions I will ask. And I'm quite open to asking, whether it be a simple formula on Excel or something a lot more complex. I'm not afraid to ask, and I'm not afraid of sort of the judgments or consequences from those. But I do appreciate that for some people, the sort of anxiousness of asking questions that you feel that you might be judged for is quite prominent in some organizations or even some roles. So I think for me, there's sort of twofold. Try, if you can, not to be afraid to ask the questions. But if you are and you don't feel comfortable enough to ask them within your organization, 9 times out of 10, I think you can find the answers yourself if you are really not wanting to ask within your organization. There are forums, blogs, plenty of advice and free tools on the internet to help you if that is something that you're just not comfortable doing. Friends and family can always be of help and assistance as well. People from previous roles. I think sometimes you just got to think slightly wider afield or out of the box for resources that can help you move forward in your career or even in your job role, regardless of what it is.
And Alex, if we pose that tip to you as well, the importance of asking questions.
Yeah, no, it's a great tip. It's certainly one I think through my journey so far, it's been one that kind of rings true to me. I've always been in that situation where I'd rather not ask questions because I don't want to, seem like I'm kind of being a bit dim or kind of not really switched on to the situations. And that's always been kind of a stigma in the back of my mind is, I don't want to be seen as that person. So certainly for me through kind of school, sixth form, and even when I was kind of on some of my training courses as an apprentice, I'd kind of sit there and go, I've got a bit of a question on that, but I'm not going to ask it. And then I'd kind of dwell on it or kind of, as Karina said, around kind of the different pieces of advice, I'd often then go and look on things like the internet afterwards and try and find the answer that way. Even to this day, I'm still trying to improve in myself that I'm, not afraid to ask questions.
I think if I can add on to there as well, Alex, just to reiterate what you've said, I think because me and Alex have worked together for quite a long time, I think if you are, if you're looking at it sort of from a step back, would you rather feel sort of out of place or uncomfortable asking a question and getting it right, or not ask the question and something going so catastrophically wrong, the impact on that is much more severe than just asking one small question to begin with?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very good point, and it's certainly something. Yeah, I'd much rather, even to this day now, I'd much rather ask the question, because obviously, as you said, oftentimes when you ask the question, you'll either be right in what you think your understanding is, or you'll just get it clarified for you. And without doing it, yeah, you can run some quite serious consequences later on down the line by perhaps misinterpreting something and then end up doing it wrong.
Find a mentor and learn what has made them to be successful. Use this to ensure you can be a mentor to someone. So Karina, if you want to share your thoughts on that first, and sort of the importance of having a mentor.
From my experience, at all ages, you can benefit from having a mentor. You're never in a position where you know all aspects of a job, business, or a role. I've had mentoring during my time with BTDEN, and I found it incredibly useful in terms of widening sort of my horizons and prospects for career progression in the future. But I've also witnessed how it can be of benefit to those regardless of age, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s, with those who have been through the 9-month program with BTDEN and have benefited from mentoring and coaching in all areas of business.
Perfect. And if I sort of ask that question to you as well, Alex, on the mentor.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, actually. I think there's a lot of advice and guidance I've learned from some of the mentors I've had, even in the short space of time I've been working. I mean, I look back at some of my previous managers who've been able to share kind of certainly quite powerful insights in terms of using the right tone in conversations and kind of approaching situations in the right mindset, which is something, when kind of you get yourself first into the world of work, is not something you might be prepared for. So I think having a mentor can be hugely impactful for that. But also sometimes you might not realize that you're a mentor to other people. So it's always important to try and be as professional as you can, but also share insight as much as you can to help others as well.
So the next tip we've got here is that it's never too late to learn something new. So Alex, if we start with you, can you sort of tell us the importance of sort of always learning, and that you can, no matter what age you are, you can always learn something new?
Yeah, no, it's a really good tip, this one. As a former and current apprentice, it's obviously one of the things that come part and parcel with the course that I'm on, which is you're always learning, whether it be on the job or kind of academically. So there's always new things to take in. I think it's important that even in day-to-day activities, I mean, speaking from myself, there's often new ideas or theories or perhaps even skills that I learn on a day-to-day basis, which purely just happen just from working and being kind of exposed to different kind of factors and projects. So it's always key to kind of have that open mindset that you might learn something new every day, and to kind of not close yourself down and think you know the best, because oftentimes you can learn new things which help you just develop even further on that. And I mean, going back to the apprentice route, I know that apprenticeships aren't just limited to younger people. You can start an apprentice kind of ages 24 plus and above and stuff like that. So that in itself is kind of a message that it is never too late to learn something new.
Yeah, and if Karina, if you can add to that as well, please.
Sure, not a problem. I think it might be cliche to say, but I think every day you do learn something new, if not every other day. And I think it's important, especially like myself and Alex, starting off fairly early on in our careers. I think in the organisation we work for and within opens your eyes to know that the top level CEO doesn't know everything about an organisation and is reliant on a board, non-executive directors. BTDEN itself relies heavily on an advisory board, so those with experience outside of a business environment. I haven't taken the same route as Alex. I went through university, and some of the things I've learnt that's been sort of fundamental in my career has been from those within industry and my connections through work, more than I ever learned in sort of an academic setting. Constantly learning something new and developing yourself, and of course that's also fundamental if you want to progress within your career, or even take sort of a different career path to the one that you first started. When I first began, I was adamant I wanted a career in advertising, and the more I learnt about the sort of the processes behind it and learnt more about a business within the LEP and BetaDen, I discovered that wasn't for me. And the things I've learned along the way through mentoring, through management, through my own team, has progressed me on sort of a slightly different path, but has all been of huge benefit to myself.
So the next tip that's come in is do your research. When you're deciding what you want to do and which industry you like the sound of, it may sound obvious, but find out everything you can about it. Accurate research and information is key, but if you do get it wrong, a job isn't for life. You can always look at something else. So again, if I start off with you, Ben, is there any sort of things you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, research is probably one of my biggest bugbears, and I think Emma's probably going to share this with me as somebody who does a lot of recruitment for the business she works for. There's two parts to it, really. One is the research that you do for yourself, and that's basically making sure that if you're going to put in a job application for a specific type of role or a specific company, that you basically understand what you're letting yourself in for. And you'll never really truly know that until you go into a job or into a company. And that's why, you can forgive yourself if maybe the odd mistake is made, and it is okay to turn around and think this isn't for me. You can move on to something different. But at least by doing that research, you're giving yourself the best chance of getting it right. Now, the flip side to that is about doing your research as well, is that if you want to give yourself the best chance of getting the role when you've decided that's what I want, make sure you've researched the industry you're joining, and make sure you've researched the company that you're looking to join. And I know Emma will agree with me that there is nothing more frustrating for an employer when they get to that point in an interview, and they all do, when they say, okay, so what do you know about us? Or what do you know about this type of role? And someone sits there and says, I don't really know. So that lack of research there can actually do you a bit of harm there, so to speak, in terms of your chances of securing something as well. It doesn't have to be, the complete company history, but just an awareness of what they do, the industry in which they operate, the products that they do, maybe how long they've been going, key people in the organisation. The internet is a wonderful thing. There is so much information out there, and it doesn't take long. A bit of Googling, other search engines are available, but, put a few keywords in there, find out about who you're applying for, and give yourself the best chance of securing that role. And the best chance of finding the thing that fits your skills and your requirements.
Yeah, research is extremely important. And is there anything you'd like to add to that, Emma, as well?
Yeah, you probably saw me smiling when Ben was talking there, because I absolutely agree with him. As HR professional, our biggest frustration when we're interviewing people is that they haven't done the research on the company. It's like, it always surprises me that you'd go to a company for an interview and not have looked into what they actually do. I mean, how can you make that right decision about whether it's right for you if you haven't done the research on the culture? Is it, have a look on their Facebook pages, look at how they, what they've said about their people, what do they do with their people. There's so much out there now, when you look on Google, to help you to make those decisions, that it really frustrates me when people come for an interview and they haven't even pressed Southco into Google. I mean, it's such an easy thing to do. And, with anything, this could be your career. And so if you don't do that research and you make that wrong decision, yes, of course, you can get yourself out of that. Of course, you can move on to the next thing. But, you want to start off in a good place, and you want to start off, especially if your first ever job, you want to make sure that it is that right decision for you. I look at myself in that when I did my apprenticeship, I was doing it in business administration. So it's kind of, that's a bit more open and a bit more vague. And I was thinking, okay, so what do I want to do? So I actually made a note of the things I enjoy doing. So I'm thinking, okay, so I like doing that, I like doing this. Will this company fit for me? And, what are the things they work on and what they do? And, I actually went for 3 or 4 interviews, and I knew when I went in, and I asked the right questions because I was thinking, do they do this? Is that going to fit with actually what I enjoy? No, I didn't go in thinking I want to be a HR manager, because believe me, you don't wake up one day and want to work in HR. It was something I fell into. But what I did know was what I enjoyed doing, and I wondered whether that company would fit with what I enjoyed doing. So absolutely get your research, because it is a big decision and it could give you a fantastic grounding for your career if you make the right one.
Yeah, and even from my own sort of personal experience on that, research is hugely important. In a recent interviews I've had, I had a little bit of a lack of lack of research, as you two have just touched on there, and then having that feedback from the employer, and understanding that that's where sort of my interview fell down, taking that into my next interview, fortunately I got the job from there. So it kind of shows the importance and the understanding of the job you're going into is really vital. The next tip is, when you have an interview, make sure you thoroughly research the company, learn who the main people are, what the company specializes in, and who their competitors are. So again, Emma, if you want to start the ball rolling with that one, and just give us a brief insight on what you think about that tip.
Certainly in terms of finding out who the main people are, LinkedIn is a massive asset. I know not every young person will have LinkedIn, but it certainly is a good asset if you're looking, for an employer, because it tells you, if you go into their webpage on LinkedIn, it will tell you all the people who work there and who are connected there. So you can see all the people that work there, and you can, look on their LinkedIn pages and understand, how long they've been at Southco and why they've stayed there. And then again, that links back to having good questions when you get there later on about, oh, tell me about so-and-so who've been there. I see your MD has been with Southco for 25 years. That's fantastic. Those kind of things you can all get from LinkedIn. I mean, it's a real, really good social piece of information on companies. So, I encourage anybody who's looking for work to have a look at that. It's certainly a good area. In terms of competitors, I think that's difficult to find out. I think unless you are a very obvious company, like Amazon or something like that, you can kind of know who your competitors are. It's very difficult for Southco because of just the range of products that we have. But what you can do is, you go to our website and you can see all the products we have. So you can certainly see what the company specializes in and the range of industries we're in. But again, you can start clicking on a lot of links on the websites that will take you to the real range and vast amount of information on the company that you can find these days.
Yeah, and LinkedIn is such a really extremely powerful tool. It really is really useful to get on there as soon as you can. And again, pass it over to Ben. Have you got anything to add to that, Ben?
Yeah, I suppose just picking up on the point around LinkedIn that Emma's just raised. LinkedIn is free to sign up to. All you need is an email address. So if you're a young person really looking to kind of go that extra level, get yourself on LinkedIn. It's easy to do. You only need to sign up to the most basic of profiles, but it opens up a huge amount of information to you. And actually, you'll probably find that when you do enter your career, you'll end up with a LinkedIn profile. So the fact that you started it early and started using it as a platform will be really beneficial to you. And in general terms, if you are trying to find out about a business, there's their company website. Most websites, company websites now, even ones who don't sell to consumers, I'll use Emma's as an example actually. Southco doesn't sell its products to Joe Blogs on the street, but like most businesses, because they're trying to promote themselves as an employer of choice, there's lots of information on there about the business and about key people in the organisation that you can access. And then I suppose just really to hammer home this research point, in my mind, and I think Emma again will probably nod with this one, but in my mind, a lack of research really to me just indicates apathy and the lack of interest. And if someone isn't really bothered to spend that 5, 10, 15 minutes online trying to find out a little bit of information about an organisation or about people, then it would suggest to me that they're not really interested in it. and not really interested in the role, the company, and they're not kind of prepared to put that little bit of groundwork in either. So I just couldn't emphasise enough the importance of, yes, do your research to find the role in the first place and to find the company that you want to apply for. But when you get that opportunity to go and sit in front of somebody or with somebody and talk to them about an opportunity, take the time to do your research, because just a small amount of it can have a huge impact on your opportunities.
Thank you very much, you two. And I think the important message there is really do your research.
Research, yeah.
So thank you very much for joining us there. I think the insight that those professionals and experts gave was sort of really invaluable. And the tips that were provided throughout the video will more than help you through your career journey. So if that has sparked your interest in careers, please do visit the Skills for Worcestershire website. So that's www.skills4worcestershire.co.uk. On there, there's all sorts of information about skills, about careers, about the different pathways you can take after your school life. There's all sorts of information and some really valuable resources on. One in particular is those career choices magazines. Again, they provide such a real insight into the different careers you could sort of undertake. So yeah, please do visit the Skills for Worcestershire website. Please do use that. It's a really useful resource and tool. Again, lots of information on there. And once again, thank you very much.